All right, today we're diving into something really interesting in the justice system, a concept that kind of flips the script a bit. What if the main goal wasn't just punishment, but rehabilitation? We're going to break down a law that's all about that idea, the Telangana Probation of Offenders Act.
But before we get into all the legal stuff, I want you to just think about something. A simple question, really. What if one mistake, one bad decision, didn't have to follow you around for the rest of your life?
It's a huge idea, right? And believe it or not, that's the exact question lawmakers were grappling with way back in 1936. They came up with this act, a piece of law built on this core belief, that sometimes, just maybe, a second chance is worth more to everyone than locking someone up.
Okay, so how does this actually work? How does this law create this different path? Well, for some first-time offenders, it's like coming to a fork in the road, right at the moment they're about to be sentenced.
Basically, the court gets two big options here. Path number one is something called admonition. Think of it as a serious, formal warning. The case is closed, you're released, that's it. Path number two is probation, and that's more like a test of your good conduct over a period of time. So let's figure out who gets to go down which path.
So, who gets off with just a warning? Well, if we look at Section 3 of the Act, this is for people who've committed more minor offenses, things like theft or cheating, anything where the punishment is less than 2 years in prison. The big one, though, you can't have any previous convictions. The court also looks at things like your age, your character, and whether the crime was, and this is a direct quote from the Act, trivial.
Okay, now for probation, that test of good conduct. The rules here are a little different, a bit broader. Section 4 actually gives special consideration to women and anyone under 21. They're eligible for most offenses. If you're over 21, it applies to crimes that carry a sentence of less than 7 years. And just like before, a clean record is an absolute must. Oh, and there's one more practical thing. You need to have a steady place to live or a regular job.
And listen, this test isn't just for a weekend. The court can make you promise to keep the peace and stay on the straight and narrow for up to 3 years. That is a serious commitment. It's a real, long-term test of your character.
But here's the thing. You're not just sent out on your own to figure it all out. There's a guide, a really key person in this whole process. And that brings us to the probation officer.
And what's really amazing is the language the law itself uses to describe this person's job. Section 10 says their duty isn't to police you, but to, get this, advise, assist, and befriend you. It even says they should try to help you find a job. I mean, that completely changes the role from someone watching you to someone who's there to support you.
So what does that look like day to day? Well, the officer visits you regularly, makes sure you're sticking to the conditions of your probation, and reports back to the court on how you're doing. The whole system is designed to have this consistent, supportive person in your corner while you're getting back on your feet.
All right, so we've got the path and we've got the guide. But what are the rules of the game? This freedom, this test, it definitely comes with some serious responsibilities.
The central piece of this whole thing is called the bond. And really, it's just a formal promise. You stand before the court and you promise to keep the peace, be on your best behavior, and follow whatever specific rules the court sets out for you, for up to 3 years.
Now, this all sounds pretty hopeful, right? But it begs the big question. What happens if you break that promise? What are the consequences if you fail the test?
Well, the law doesn't mess around here. If you have a small slip-up for the first time, the court might just give you a small penalty. But if you don't pay that penalty, or if you mess up in a more serious way, the court has the power to just cancel the probation altogether. And then they can sentence you for the original crime you were convicted of. So yeah, that second chance is definitely not a guarantee.
Okay, we've talked about the path, the guide, and the test, including what happens if you fail. But what's the whole point of this? What happens when someone actually passes the test? This is where we get to the reward. The real prize, a clean slate.
But first, let's just remember why this is such a big deal. A criminal conviction, it's not just about the time you served. It can be like a permanent stain on your record that follows you everywhere, making it hard to get a job, a place to live, you name it.
And this is where you see the real power of this law. Section 12A. This is the magic part. It says that if you successfully complete your probation, you shall not suffer any disqualification attaching to a conviction for the offense. That sounds a bit legalish, so let's break down what that actually means for a person's life.
So, a disqualification? What is that? It's basically any legal or social roadblock that a conviction puts in your way. You know, the thing that gets you rejected for a job or makes it impossible to go back to school. All the stuff that stops you from truly moving on.
So when the law says it removes that disqualification, that changes everything. It means it's suddenly easier to find a job. You can actually apply for higher education. You can qualify for loans, for housing. In a nutshell, the act literally erases that stain, giving you a real, genuine path forward, a true second chance.
And really, that's the whole idea behind this law. It's a different way of thinking. And it leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on, doesn't it? Just think, how many futures could be completely changed for the better if we focused more on rehabilitation and a little less on just punishment?